Welcome back to the Free Code Camp podcast. I'm Quincy Larson, teacher and founder of freeCodeCamp.org. Today, I'm interviewing Chris Coyier. He's a front-end developer and co-founder of CodePen and the famous CSS-Tricks blog that you've probably used a ton if you've ever tried to debug some CSS. Before we get to him, I want to make some quick community updates. We just published a free 17-hour course on how to build your own continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline. So that's CI/CD. You may have seen that acronym. Essentially, what we're going to help you do is help you get your apps to production safely. Along the way, you're going to learn about branching strategies, Jenkins, freestyle jobs, GitFlow, Maven, and more. This is a perfect way to build your skills over spring break. Again, 17-hour course on the Free Code Camp YouTube channel. We also published a course that will teach you how to fine-tune an LLM and incorporate your own proprietary data. This is super useful if you need off-the-shelf LLMs to do novel tasks that they weren't originally optimized for. This course will teach you all about parameter efficient fine-tuning and how to use techniques like LoRa and QLoRa to train your models on consumer-grade hardware. No data center needed. This is a comprehensive 12-hour free course on the Free Code Camp YouTube channel. Check it out after you finish listening to this podcast. And learn how to protect your sensitive data by running your LLMs locally. This course will teach you how to get up and running with Ollama, Python, LangChain, and LangGraph. It will also walk you through the various trade-offs you face when you want to avoid sharing your data with big tech companies. So obviously it's a lot easier to just use the big LLMs out there, but if you really care about having your data yours and not sharing it and not having to read through a bunch of data sharing agreements and things like that and worry about like future acquisitions and stuff like that, you can do it locally. This tutorial will show you how. We also published a tutorial that will show you how agents are changing the field of software development in terms of helping you build mobile apps if you're not a mobile app developer. This in-depth tutorial will get you hands-on experience with building your own Flutter mobile app using anti-gravity and Stitch. You don't even need to know Flutter. You just need to understand the core concepts and make the architectural decisions. You'll quickly see how sophisticated these tools gotten just over the past few months. This is a 40-minute read on the Free Code Camp publication. And the album of the week, that's right, full album, 1982 Jazz Fusion Classic, Mint Jams by Cassiopeia. This is a perfect record to put on when you want to get a ton of work done and you want to feel great in the process. For each song, each of the performers gets to solo. So that means every track you're going to hear a spicy bass solo, a keyboard solo, a drum solo, and a guitar solo. I love this album. I've listened to it probably hundreds of times. Check it out. Support for Free Code Camp comes from the 10,338 kind folks who donate to our charity each month. Join them and support our mission at freecodecamp.org/donate. And if you want to pick up a Free Code Camp shirt, $20 shipped anywhere in the US. Go to shop.freecodecamp.org if you want to print your own. It is totally fine to take our logo and print it on a shirt for your own personal, non-commercial usage. Again, shop.freecodecamp.org. Today's interview, I'm talking with Chris Coyier, again, founder of CodePen.io, which I've used, hundreds of hours I've spent tweaking things on there. CSS-Tricks blog. He's written so many tutorials over the years. He's recorded more than 700 podcasts about software engineering, plus 300 episodes of CodePen Radio. If you've heard of the Shop Talk podcast, that's 10, 15 years running. We're going to talk about how he thinks about front-end development tools and how he thinks that they're about 90% of the way to where they need to be, how developing for the web is just as good as mobile, and you can reuse it everywhere, including on mobile. So like web development, focus on that first. He's a huge web development stan, as am I. And why high-skilled devs working on novel platforms don't need to worry about AI disrupting their careers because they are doing things that are truly novel, and that is not something that's in the training data. Chris Coyier, welcome to the Free Code Camp podcast.
I'm super glad to be here. Thanks, Quincy.
Yeah, I mean, you are a legend. You're a hero of mine. It's thrilling to be talking with you in real time. I think we run into each other at conferences, but we haven't had time to talk. So now this is that time.
Yeah, it's awesome. Just two famous guys talking, we can barely walk down the street these days, but
Yeah. People are just like chasing me around. Can I have your autograph? No, it's extremely rare that I get recognized, actually.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to start with a question that I think is on a lot of people's minds right now with all the AI-assisted coding, the LLM tools.
Yeah.
Is it still worth learning CSS for career reasons beyond intellectual curiosity?
Yeah. Good question. I hope so. It certainly feels, I know there's some people that are just like, oh, I used to be useful, but now I'm just a turd or whatever. You're like, oh, that's not true. For one thing, as cool as these tools are, and there's a lot of nuance here, like it's I don't want to be a friggin' stan and just be like, they're the greatest thing that's ever happened, because I don't necessarily feel that way, and there's a lot of like unfair crap these companies can done, but at this point you're like, whoa, it's pretty impressive, isn't it, what they're getting done? But like just as one thing, the better you are at whatever you're asking it to do, CSS included, the sharper scalpel you're wielding with it. Like the better questions you can ask of it, the better prompting you can do, the better analysis you're going to be able to do out of the results. So like just learning more makes you better at using them too. So it's kind of best of both worlds. Like I would never advocate not learning something. Like, I know you asked, just because of intellectual curiosity or whatever, that's a good reason to learn things too, because it just makes you smarter. And as you're smarter, you're just a more effective person in the world. But yeah, of course you should learn. You better. Somebody needs to know what they're doing around here.
Yeah, and specifically CSS, because I know like CSS-Tricks, your blog, like you've spent a great deal of time, maybe more than most devs, like 99% of devs, actually writing CSS and working with CSS and doing front-end development, like in kind of like the more, like you've gone through all the different eras of front-end development. And would you argue that like now front-end development is starting to resemble kind of like full-stack development, that there's convergence and like a lot of front-end devs know enough back-end to like be able to deploy and stuff like that? Like, have you seen a convergence in the skill set?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, I think an individual developer is like more powerful than they used to be. And there used to be like maybe a stronger divide from like, I'm a back end person and I'm a front end person. And now it's like you see back end devs like being a little bit more comfortable with building their own front ends. Maybe that's Shad CN, maybe that's LLMs, maybe that's Bootstrap if you want to go older school, I don't know, maybe they're more comfortable with that. And certainly front end people are more comfortable getting their creations online in some way. I wouldn't even hate if CodePen was part of that story, but still, like before that, it was like, Netlify came on the scene and they just made it a lot easier to be like, oh, this repo equals this website, so just push stuff in that repo and then it's online. So yeah, I think capabilities wise, especially over like a 10-year period, is like there's convergence in that just individuals are a lot more comfortable like producing complete websites, which is, in my opinion, pretty sweet.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about like the disruption though. Like, of course, everybody's talking about this. All you read about in like tech news, if you go on YouTube, every other video is like, I just lost my job as a senior developer, and like all the jobs are going away and stuff like that. Like, it would be pretty easy for somebody to just punt on learning CSS, right? Instead of investing the time to get good with it. If the possible outcome is like, oh, there, like, it doesn't matter how much CSS I know or how good I am with it, it's going to be hard to find a job. Like, what would you say in terms of like how insulated you can become from these market like constraints and pressures if you actually do learn and become like an S tier front end dev or designer?
Oh, I see what you mean. Like if you're officially actually super duper good, is that more important than like you're gonna survive a company that's like, we're not really hiring?
Yeah, like overcoming that gravity of like the managers
that's
are like,
a hard
we
question.
can't hire devs anymore. We don't have a budget for devs. They're a cost center.
Yeah, I we'll see. I feel like a little uncomfortable speaking for like what companies are deciding to do, because I don't do a ton of hiring or firing, I guess, and that's hard to know. But I would think like, yeah, if you're like some god tier designer, that you actually are a little safe, because just probably because you're known and you're just so I guess you have to make yourself demonstrably good though. You can't just be good in a hole. I think if you actually are like just amazing, your personal website better be amazing. you better be able to like very clearly show how amazing you are. And I do think that makes you pretty freaking employable still. People want that. And it's like, I don't know, maybe I don't want to focus too much on like one tiny little period of time, but I will just for a second. And I know that like Claude is like the big name right now and Claude Code and whatever, but I think these things shift over time. But they're like, have you seen our front end design skill? That's like a word right now. If you're listening to this 2 hours from now, skills probably won't even be a thing, but that's their thing. And if you ask it for a design, it'll be like accessing our front end design skill. Dude, I promise you what comes out of that, I could smell 100 miles away. It just has this particular style that it applies that I can just be like, yeah, Claude did that. Is it relatively nice? Sure. But it's like even more, I can smell it faster than I used to be able to smell Bootstrap. It's just like, that's that. You cannot launch a big time app right now and have it look exactly like that. It would just be embarrassing, I think. It's not going to stand out. It's not going to say what it needs to say. It's going to say, I had an LLM do this. And I worry that there's like I don't know, when somebody shows me like, I made this new app over the weekend, you got to try it. And it smells like that. I'll be like, nah, I'd rather not. You know, I think you need skilled, talented people to make unique things. I mean, in a way, web design is art, you know, and LLMs ain't doing art.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that, like, you know, as somebody who really loves music and plays music and stuff, you can hear AI music from a mile away, and it's so grating and disgusting and like revolting to your senses that like they put all the great music into this giant blender and they produce this gray puree slop basically, and then they play that at the restaurant. You know,
I can't say I've heard a lot of it,
escape it, right? But a lot of people don't notice or care. They don't know, oh, this is AI music that sucks. They're just like, yeah, whatever, you know. I can study to it. You know, like, do you think that sort of thing is going to start to happen to web design in general? Like that people who can actually differentiate between like good and mediocre. And again, I don't want to be like clutching my pearls, but like,
right.
do you think that could come for us as developers and designers, that mediocrity could be good enough and could become?
That's here right now. That's not like it could be. I think we're living in it at this exact moment. That there's just a ton of that. These tools are really capable. And so if what they're producing is like good enough for your company, especially these like new things, I think there is a distinction between an LLM helping you on an existing large code base with lots of context, and it's just like helping you root out bugs and that kind of thing, versus like, I've got this new app idea and I'm just going to let it do the whole ass thing from scratch this weekend. Like that's like almost a different class of thing. And yeah, like yeah. If there's too much of it, will there be some kind of like mental revolt? Like, I don't want to look at it, I don't want to hear it. And I think that's happening right now too, that you get some saturation of it that just makes you want to not see it anymore.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more positively about like things that are happening in the front end development space.
Sure.
You know, like, what is exciting you about the front end development in general? We've got, of course, like HTML5 was a huge unlock, and then we've had lots of different standards that have been developed over the years, which you've covered in extreme detail on your 700 plus episode Shop Talk podcast. It's so refreshing to tune in, regardless of what's going on in the world, and you all are going to be talking about like developer experience and like new things that you all can do with the front end. Like, what is exciting you these days about front end development?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's lots of stuff, which is pretty exciting, I think. And I don't think we need to even bother tying it to AI stuff, but it is kind of fun to think about that, like the newest of the new, they don't even know about. So you can't even get help with it anyway. Isn't that fun? But I would say in the last like 2 years of development, let's just scope it at that, is probably like more exciting than HTML5 was. There's like more change and more bigger bolder, more interesting things have happened lately than that whole thing was. I mean, that thing was big, you know, and it was big for FreeCodeCamp, I imagine too. Educationally, HTML5 drew this line in the sand that was like, here is a bucket of stuff, and we're very clear about what's in the bucket and what's not. And that stuff you could just teach, and you could say, I will teach you HTML5, which meant a little bit of HTML, but it meant JavaScript stuff and CSS stuff. It kind of circled the whole bucket. And I think that was really cool. Since then, there's been like efforts to like, can we do that again? It was not just useful for the education industry, but it was useful for everybody, because they could somebody more casually that's just like, I want to learn some new stuff, could learn what's in the new bucket. Like they could, if there was an HTML6, they could like be like, I'm going to take that set of learning materials and then feel like I'm up to date. That was useful. And I think a lot of us miss that. That'd be cool if it came back. So we'll see if we ever get that. I think there's a possibility. I think it's more likely to happen in individual, like CSS starts to fragment, you know, like JavaScript already does. They do a good job with this. They have an ES release every year, ES 2025. What's in ES 2025? What's in ES 2026? Like temporal is going to be in that. And it's such a beautiful technology for working with dates and times. And it's like, then you can just like learn that and then feel like you're up to date. But yeah, CSS has been popping off with view transitions, anchor positioning, starting style, just lots of incredible stuff. Like the fact that now you can open and close modal dialogues and what they call popovers, which are awfully useful for things like tooltips and menus and stuff like that. And you are opening and closing it and doing it accessibly without a single line of JavaScript is like, it just warms my heart. It's so great.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if I had to like summarize the slow march toward essentially like finished front end development experience, where you had everything you needed and anything you could dream of building, you could just sit down and all the tools would be there, all the colors would be on your palette.
Right.
Like, what percentage do you think we are to achieving that? Like basically front end development being done in terms of the actual toolbox that you have access, not necessarily the expression and application of those tools, but just having those tools in the toolbox. How close are we?
Yeah, I wonder what other people would say to this. I feel like we're pretty close, that there's not there. To me, it doesn't feel like there's huge gaps sitting there that's like, oh, baby, we're not even close. We're 50% there, but I can look at this. You can't do this. You can't do that. I think it's closer to something like 90%. Like, point to me designs that are absolutely impossible to do online, but that you're not trying to trick the system, but they're just a practical thing. Like, open a magazine and show me if you can do that on the web or not, or you know, show me designs through history or freshly thought of designs. Probably you can do it with the tools that we have now. And then there's a matter of doing it, and then there's doing it like ergonomically. Like the fact that we have anchor positioning now, which is like, take this element that's somewhere in the DOM and like put it next to this other element and be able to describe that in a relatively like nice and logical way is very powerful. Maybe you wouldn't say like, oh, it unlocks something that would have been impossible to do otherwise, but you're doing it so much more practically and ergonomically that it just feels good. And then there's the things that you'd expect. Like, we have really solid grid layout now, and columns are getting a lot more practical and all that. Like, I can put stuff on the screen where I need to put it and do so with a language that feels flexible and kind of like ready for, you know, ready for consumption and maintenance over time and all that. Feels like, what else are we missing? Can we point at little things that we don't have? Sure, maybe. I mean, that magazine one makes me think of like, I don't know, maybe you want text that flows from a box and one part of the screen to a box that feels a little unrelated somewhere else on the screen, just because you're trying to be, I don't know, especially avant-garde with your layout or something. Maybe we're missing that. Maybe we're missing flowing from place to place. Sometimes they call that region style layout in CSS. Are we missing that? We are. But I'm happy to put that in the 10% missing bucket. Not saying that that's representative of some giant 50% chunk that we're missing. I think it's smaller stuff by then. I do actually suspect CSS development to slow down a little bit the next couple of years because of how much we've gotten, how quickly, that it'll be smaller stuff, and it's still exciting and fun to play with, but less fundamental than big stuff that we've dropped. For a huge one is like has. There's this selector called has in CSS, and it just says, does this element have within it another absolutely arbitrary selector? Like, is there a check? Like, you could say body has input checked. Is there a checked input anywhere in the body? Then not only can you style the body, but you can then continue your selector and then say, well, select the footer then and do something with the footer. That like ability to express that in one statement is so powerful that it's like, it's unbelievable what you can do with it. And we've gotten it so relatively recently that I'm concerned that a lot of developers don't even know that we have it. You know, LLMs might not know that we have it or be able to wield it and use it in kind of appropriate ways. And that's just one thing of a slew of other stuff that we've gotten. So, you know, certainly just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript just itself is a bright spot in the last couple of years, that the web APIs are killer. You know, I've read, you know, like, you know, an article recently that's like, why aren't some of these big time web apps that are like quote unquote native apps that are dropping, why aren't they built with Swift or technologies that you think of as native technologies for native apps? And it's not because like, I don't know, LLMs just can't do it or whatever. It's because web technologies are like just as good, that you can build a very, very beautiful app in Electron, possibly better, possibly easier because it is reusing components from the website that you already produce, and have it not be like, oh, this just looks like a junky web app that they, you know, like an iframe, they threw a native wrapper around. It feels just as good, maybe better than a native app. That's very encouraging to me, especially, you know, because guys like me and you we took the web path. So
yeah, I mean, like, I'll just say, I'll put my biases on the table. Like, I have zero interest in developing mobile apps. I don't even have interest in using mobile apps. I don't even use my phone. I have a laptop that's small, like this MacBook Air, and I just take that with me everywhere. And if I need to do anything that's going to take more than like a few keystrokes, I'm doing it on my laptop, because I want that fully powered like form factor, where I have like all my hotkeys and everything like that. I'm just not. It just doesn't excite me like mobile apps. And I understand, and also the fact that they're like trapped in these ecosystems, that Google takes 30% or iPhone takes 30%, and you've got like this extremely slow process of like submissions, and they're trying to like nanny everything. You don't have true freedom in the App Store ecosystem, right? Like you can't do half the things you want to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, data suggests that if it's a content-driven site, that you are seeing more people access your site through mobile. So some places don't have any excuse.
Or you could just take you could just shell
100%.
like CodeCamp. We have a Flutter app. Like so we do have CodeCamp mobile apps on Apple and Android, but you know, like
using web technology to some degree. We've
done our absolute best to try to get that to work well. Like coding on a phone is hard to do, as you probably know, running CodePen.
Right.
It's hard to like, okay, the keyboard takes up like half the screen now. Okay,
right.
I'm done with this. And like, okay, where am I selecting? And like Apple just changed a whole bunch of this stuff. And like one of their recent like versions, they like tried to hide the URL bar. So it's like this thing, and I just and there's like double X's. There's like an X to like clear your URL field, and there's like an X to like dismiss the keyboard. It's like really confusing. And it feels like you're kind of swimming upstream trying to code on a phone. This is a great point for us to transition to talking about CodePen. For anybody who hasn't used CodePen, it is an extremely useful website that I've clocked many hours on, where you can go and essentially you've got an HTML field, a CSS field, and a JavaScript field.
Right.
And you just start building. Can you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. And certainly we got a lot of users for a really long time still, really, from freeCodeCamp. So thanks for that. You know, I think that it was encouraged, you know, it might have been like a step or whatever, like go do this and then say that you did it as part of your freeCodeCamp curriculum, which was nice because you all do such a good job at like catching people early in there. Like, I want to learn how to code. And obviously the free part of FreeCodeCamp is highly appealing to a lot of people and good for the world, certainly. And then to have them be like, well, you can kind of see what you're coding if you do it over on CodePen, because that was the core premise, is that you don't have to install anything. You just go to a website and you have a code editor, and you can level up a little bit from there too. It's like people would use it because, for example, SAS was popular for a long time, still is to some degree. It's just not like a hot name or anything. But I want to write in that. How would I do that locally? Well, certainly I have the ability to do that as a developer, but it means I gotta like set up a little web server to serve my, files. I need to set up a little build process that processes my SAS. Or you come to CodePen and you just flip on the SAS processor and you just start writing in SAS. Yeah. The idea was it's just easier to get going. But the origin of CodePen was blogging. It was from the CSS-Tricks days. I was just showing some college students this the other day, like how old school it used to be, like early days CSS-Tricks, the blog. I would make a demo and I would like FTP it up to a folder somewhere so that I would have a URL that I could go show them the result of the demo I was trying to do. And it was just kind of on them to view source or something and look at it. A lot of times I would take those files and I would make a zip file, and then in the blog post I'd be like, download the zip to get the code. And then they'd unzip it, and then they'd have copies of the code. So you could put code in a blog post. That's not so bad. But you're not really like, you're like, oh yeah, prove it. Like it's a much more compelling experience to look at the code and look at the rendered output of that code at the same time. And there was apps to do this a little before CodePen's time. So we didn't like fully invent this, but JS Fiddle was really big, still around. JS Bin was popular from Remy. JS Bin, Remy still runs that and is blogging about it to this day. We picked an industry where nobody ever dies, unfortunately. It's like there's only ever more competition.
And you've been going for like 10, 12 years? Like how long has CodePen been a thing?
Yeah, almost 15, I think, because 2012 was our beta, so we were around in like 2011. So I don't know, 16 years, I guess.
Yeah. And so tell me, like, you just released version 2.0 after
all
16
this
years.
time.
Yeah. Let's talk about like, that's a major release. That's not a point release anymore. That's like an actual like full release. What happened? Like, what did you roll out?
Well, yeah, I can tell that story. I think, of course, I'm highly interested in telling that story because it's fascinating and relevant to me. But, but rounding that out because it's relevant to this story is that you make what we call a pen on CodePen, and then you could pick it up and put it on a blog post. I mean, you can put it in a free CodeCamp blog post if you want to. You certainly put it on CSS-Tricks, but we wanted other people to use it too. It was in the React docs. It was in the Vue docs. Chrome uses it. Apple uses it. All kinds of places do it. They put it in there because it's this proof the proof is in the pudding thing. There's the code. There's the output. You can't fake it. There's no hallucinations here. There it is. There's the code, which I love, right? So the point of it was helping those type of sites. To this day, about half the traffic to CodePen comes from the embeds that are sprinkled about all around the whole internet, which also is good marketing. I don't know how you all ever did marketing because you're crushing it that way, but we all have different tactics. I don't think either of our strategies was, buying billboards or whatever.
We've never spent $1 on advertising, which as a charity,
really,
that's like our 501c3 tax exempt charity. So, like the IRS doesn't like for you to be spending a lot on advertisements. Like, what are you trying to do? And like donors don't like to see like, oh, fundraising is this huge percentage. Like a lot of charities, you'll look and they'll be like, 60% of their money that they take in, they're just using to get even more money. And it becomes like this infinite money glitch type thing. But that's not what investors want to see, or not investors, but donors.
No, and it's more appealing even from the startup angle too, is like, that's a weird money sink. Like we'd prefer that it's viral for some other reason, like your word of mouth is really good or whatever it is.
Getting Apple.com and like all these other websites to literally embed your CodePens has got to be like good for SEO, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it's not secret. There's a big freaking CodePen logo in the corner of those embeds.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't say we never spent $1 because we probably like sponsored some newsletters and stuff here and there, but we never had a big advertising budget for sure because we kind of got it for free because of the embeds. Not to mention just CSS tricks in general and stuff that I owned and could write about whatever. So kind of a nice hack there. But yeah, at one point we took a little bit of investment. Which we still have, but that was the only round we ever took. And we used it to hire a few people because it felt a little safer because we had a few more bucks. And then we made this product called Projects. And the idea is, how you describe it, that's how everybody thinks of CodePen. There's HTML in a little box and CSS in a little box and JavaScript in a little box. And then they all get smashed together and they show you the preview. That's okay. Like, I'm happy that people think of CodePen in that way, but we'd also have people tell us that they lose us sometimes. And they're like, well, what if you need 2 HTML files? All right, got to go somewhere else,
I mean,
so
that's like the constraint. The key constraint that makes CodePen so approachable and unintimidating is just those 3 different boxes and not having like a giant, build process and everything that comes with having lots of different
in a way,
files
2.0 was like, I want to not lose those people. Like, I don't want to like turn our back on what was successful so far. Cause look we have employees. We're doing just fine. Everybody getting paid around here. Miraculously, let's hold on to that. I don't want to pivot so hard that we're forgetting about that. But this projects thing, and this was a bunch of years ago now, was the idea that like, we'll give you the sidebar too. And that if you do want 2 HTML files, you can do it. And it supported largely the same stuff as the pen editor did. The main distinction was that you got a file system with it. The problem is it was like a different world. It was like just you'd have to think, you'd have to know about it. You'd have to decide which one you're going to do, a pen or a project and stuff. And it like did okay. I'd say it was not a failure of a product, but it never really took off in the way that I wanted it to. So, okay, time goes on, and we're like, what can we do here? As you know, man, technology changes, front-end design changes, and not just the core technology, the browser stuff, which I admit I get like the most excited about, like what actually browsers can do. But I get excited about the tools too, like all kinds of, there's the churn in new frameworks across just the JavaScript ecosystem. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable how much that stuff changes. And those are processors too, like Svelte or something. That's a JavaScript language that needs to be processed. Does CodePen support Svelte? Can you go play with Svelte? You're the same type of person that I want to support. You're a front-end developer and you care about this language? No, you can't. We don't have Svelte support on CodePen. That bugs me as a business owner. You're like, oh man, we're not serving the entire Svelte community because we just don't have that as a processor. But time kind of, passed us by a little bit. Like Svelte also kind of assumes you're processing those files kind of in the context of a file system, not really what Pens had with just the 3 boxes. It's a little weird to do that. Vue was kind of the same way. Vue has this concept of .view files, and .view files need to get processed down and kind of bundled together, and they have their own little way of doing that, especially now because of Vite and all that. So at one point we're like, well, let's make an editor that's just for Vue. I think a lot of people don't know we have this, but I think it's still live now. You could go do it now. It was an editor that was specifically designed just for .view files, and we'd process those for you. But now we got, and we did the same thing for Flutter too, believe it or not. So we have a Flutter editor, a Vue editor, the project editor, and the pen editor. It's starting to be a little too much technical debt for our small team to be managing all these editors. And the 2.0 idea was founded on, dang, we want to support so many more ways of building things. But this way we're doing it now isn't cutting it. What if we can, do the one ring to rule them all kind of thing? Can we build one editor that can just do everything? And then we can shut down these other editors and make everybody happy. It's the same old school CodePen. 3 boxes, you use the 3 boxes. If that's all you care about, rock and roll, you got it. You want to add files to it? Okay, you can add files to it. You want to add different ways of processing? You want Svelte? You want other things like that? We can add those in there too. Like, what if we could do it all? So we, went back to the drawing board and was like, can we build a system that can support the fact that we know everything's going to change, that there's processors that are coming out that we haven't even heard of yet, and we want to architect this thing to support those. So we built it, and that's what CodePen 2.0 is. It is in public beta now. We finished it. It took forever, but it in a way, forever, not like we are dragging our feet. It took a long time to think about and architect a system that worked for this and do it in a way that's backwards compatible with everything we've ever done. And supports the future as well. It took a long time to get the details right, not to mention we're the type that just do everything ourselves. We're not using anybody else's editor. It's just a totally handcrafted experience through and through. And we did it while supporting the old CodePen as we do it. So I'm
interesting. So
stoked.
One thing that jumps out of there, what you say, like you just want to do it right. Like you seem maniacally obsessed with doing things right, and that came through when we were talking about AI slop and stuff like that earlier, right? Like you just there's this craftsmanship in you. Would you say is that a fair characterization? That you
I hope so. When it comes from our team too, though, like it just became a cultural thing. My co-founder is Alex Vasquez, and he's huge on this because we've had so much success in like slowing down and being like, if there's a problem, we're going to make it like the cultural thing that we're going to do, that if there's a user facing problem on this app, we are going, that's the thing to fix. And we're going to do that as long as it takes until we're not hearing about bugs very often at all. So that's a kind of an example of doing it right. That didn't come from me. It came from Alex. But it came from me seeing how Alex wanted to roll and like helping embrace that as part of the culture of the company for a long time. And it got to this point that we're like, this is stable as hell. And I feel like if people don't think about that as CodePen, they feel it. That like one of the reasons you might come to CodePen and use it is because it just works. And all the time, it's never down and there's no bugs. It's, it just does the thing that it needs to do. That's not on accident. And it requires like, a culture that will fix anything at any time, like that's the top priority to do. But that's a little bit at odds with making a new 2.0 that's absolutely from scratch, because it's hard to prioritize both of those things. So for a long time, the priority remained making the existing CodePen extremely stable and do things that our customers needed to do. And then when we have time, we're working on 2.0. And then that dial had to shift over time where it was really stable. So it wasn't taking up as much of our time, so we can dedicate more time to the 2.0 product.
Yeah, I mean, like I see direct parallels with what FreeCodeCamp's doing. Of course, we're working on version 10
of
the core curriculum. And the version 10, like we've gone through so many revisions from my janky JavaScript tutorials, like where you're like just rendering the cat photo app, and now it's like this extremely robust project-oriented series of thousands of hours of coursework. And frankly, at the same time, like we want to serve everybody who's going through that, but we also want to serve the people that are like, I don't have time. I don't have 2,000 hours to learn programming.
Right.
I want to know how to use an LLM to get basic things done for my job. I'm not a developer. I'm an accountant. I just need an app that does X, Y, Z.
Okay.
So we're to some extent, we're like trying to serve two completely different demographics, those that actually want to learn coding and those who just want to get dangerous, to use a term frequently used in web development. They want to get dangerous with these tools so they can actually like look and understand what's going on, but they don't need they need recognition, not necessarily recall, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
That's kind of like how we're looking at it. And like, how can we abridge the curriculum to just get people like a fast track to being able to do AI assisted development? And so we're trying to serve like the people who do like you and I, who want to learn the fundamentals and who think like there is no knowledge that is not power, and that everything you learn makes you more powerful. And like, why wouldn't you want to compound all that? But there's practical realities where people are just too busy. Like people need to make money now to pay for their kids. They can't necessarily, hypothetically 2 years from now, get a junior developer job. Like that is not going to solve their problems today. And a lot of people want to maybe get dangerous and then go and backfill later with the curriculum. So to some extent, we have to build out, like we're trying to finish version 10 of the curriculum, and it's coming this year. We're working very hard on it. And like probably like 70% of FreeCodeCamp team dedicated to that, but we're also publishing tons of courses on like how to use like OpenClaw and use vector databases and use like various LLM.
Yeah, because you want to be up to date with the times, right?
So we're trying to like meet the market, where like two different markets essentially with our teaching. And it sounds to me like you have like probably a big audience of diehard, just like, hey, just give me my HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and I know what I'm doing. I don't need like some framework to do the heavy lifting. I'm just going to go in and like let me drive manual, and then people are like, oh well, I've got this big heavy tool chain, and I want to bring that over to CodePen too. Is that an accurate assessment of like how you're trying to kind of serve both?
Yeah, well, not turning your back on the simplicity of it while supporting more complicated workflows. Yeah, that's true. That I feel like that was a little bit hard to pull off, but it seems like we're doing okay so far through our beta processes and things like that. Yeah, it's interesting. Your curriculum is like, are you like even like pulling detail out of the curriculum? Like this, like a course that was a deeper dive is like not totally gone, but like slightly more shallow because then it makes it quicker to finish, or not quite?
So we're first, like the main thing we're doing is just getting all the detail there, like really going in and like sketching out everything, and then we're gonna like try to strategically subtract and essentially like compend. I'm trying to think of a good verb. Annex or not annex, but like kind of like whenever they like the complete works of William Shakespeare versus the, what is it?
Sure.
Like digested, amended
Abridged.
version of abridged. Yes, we're trying to abridge the free code because we still think people need to learn these key skills: Python, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Bash, Git, Linux types of SQL, stuff like that. We still think people need to learn that stuff, but it could be that like people just need to get dangerous with that stuff, and then they can go do some stuff, build some projects, and then they can come back and when they're ready.
Yeah, perhaps
finish.
That's it. Fascinating thought. I think of something like, okay, CSS has some fundamental concepts called like the box model or whatever. It's width and height. Okay, everything on the web is a rectangle. So every element's a rectangle, and you can control it, and you can push away other rectangles with margin, and you can push inwards on your elements with padding, and then there's a border, and then there's an outline, but the outline's not part of the box model. All this fundamental stuff that but then all of a sudden, not so long ago, we got names for all these things like margin and padding and border and these things that they're called logical properties. So instead of saying padding left, we have padding inline start. And for a lot of us that just, are English speaking people making English websites, those two things are synonymous and they do the exact same thing. But we are told like, hey, maybe it's smarter if we use padding inline start instead of padding left, because they are actually a little bit different. The idea is that it's padding along the direction of where the text starts. So if the language were to change to right to left language, like, I don't know, Hebrew or something, that the padding then still is on the side of the text where the text starts, and it actually translates better. So if all you ever used in CSS, instead of left and right and all these, there's logical versions of the same ones, that it's just kind of nice. It's better for the web. So from a curriculum standpoint, man, do you spend a lot of time teaching margin left? Because margin left is how we grew up. That's what we did. Or do you just scrap it? Just throw it away and just teach margin inline start to begin with, because you're trying to move a little faster. I'm not asking you exactly what you're doing, but that's the kind of thing that I might consider trimming away.
We have several projects dedicated to the box model. It's such an important notion within CSS, for example. But CSS is just a very tiny part of what we're trying to teach. Because the number of jobs out there where I just work with CSS all day, like that is a pretty small percentage. Whereas like if you look, like I think like 50 or 60% of all job postings are web developer jobs, but they're like general full stack developer jobs. So CSS is just a very tiny skill within that entire thing.
It is, yeah. But admittedly, who's getting hired just as like your job is only CSS here? That's wasn't ever true, I don't think. Yeah. And now it's very
being a specialist and being like T-shaped, as the marketers like to say, where you've got like the general purpose thing, but you're really deep in CSS, or you're really deep in, like getting performance out of, or you're really good with like WASM and stuff, and like, translation.
That can be like great. Although I feel like it's like almost better once you get hired. Like if it turns out that you get the job and then you're like amazing at CSS and people see that, it could help you thrive at the job, but maybe not get the job. So
I mean, like maybe the managers aren't so specific in what they're just like, can this person go through all these tickets and fix all these bugs? And like for that, they're looking for like generalists. So FreeCodeCamp is essentially like a factory for generalists. we tell people like, okay, here are the most likely things. Here's like the critical kind of like core of what you need to learn, and then go forth with this. But what I tell people is like, be a generalist and then specialize on the job. Once your employer's like saying like, hey, why don't you do more of this work? And then you kind of like learn the more specialized stuff on the job. And of course, like every time I even open my mouth and talk about jobs, people in the comments are like, what jobs? What jobs? They're all disappearing. The sky's falling. Like, what would you say to somebody in the comment section right now on YouTube who's like, this is like, you're just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Like none of this stuff matters. Because again, it comes up constantly. It's all I hear whenever I'm trying to teach people. And I go to other people's channels and they're teaching like, esoteric CSS properties and stuff like that. And it's just people kind of coming in with the gloom and doom and like feeling the general malaise. Like our days are numbered as developers. It's over.
It's just, it's felt like that for a while. I think if you're a person who's looking for a job and having a hard time doing it, that you can be real vocal about that, perhaps. But it's been not the hottest market for tech even before AI stuff showed up. So I can kind of see how that's true. But I've seen a little bit of data that's not the case, that hiring is down a little, but it isn't like halved. It's nowhere near that.
Yeah.
So
People
I think the
see these
actual
charts
like
and they
large
see the
scale
change and they don't realize, oh, this is the year-on-year change. It's not like the total number of developers. Total number of developers has contracted a bit, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as people seem to think. Like just nobody's hiring.
Yeah.
Because
I think we're going to learn a lot in 6 months. Like these tools are not like, okay, they're here, they're arrived, they're super duper capable in a lot of different ways. And if the job market doesn't like absolutely get smoked in 6 months, then I don't know. Like, I don't think that change is like all of a sudden going to show up years from now. And I'd like to hope at least that people who know what they're doing are still important in the world, that I want to hire people because I don't care if they're using AI or not. I need somebody to be responsible for this product. I need to tell you, hey, we need, two-factor auth built into this thing, and it needs to get done, and it needs to get done right. And I'm going to ask Jeremy to do that, not Claude, because I need Jeremy to be responsible and own that at this company. And I need a developer to do that. Maybe I could do it on the weekend or something, but my plate's real full already. So I need somebody to do that. And I think that's just true generally of work. We need people to talk to and to be responsible for things and all this type of stuff. Just because the technical bit is maybe a little easier than it used to be is not like a complete story of employment. So I'm optimistic in that way, that we need responsible people to be doing the work still.
Yeah. I'm not going to ask Claude to do it. I'm going to ask Jeremy to do it. I love it. Yeah. So I want to transition a little bit to talking about you and your lifestyle. Of course, you're out in Bend, Oregon, which is not Silicon Valley, right? It's not San Francisco. It's not Palo Alto. Why Bend, Oregon, when you frankly, anybody who knows anything about you, you sold, CSS-Tricks to DigitalOcean, but you're out in Bend, Oregon. What inspired you to live out there as opposed to if you really want to be in the heart of a lot of the technological disruption and innovation and stuff, closer to the Bay Area?
Yeah, I've never felt that strongly about stuff like that. I'm like, how computers work, right? We're all connected with the internet.
Yeah.
So
the bits reach Bend, Oregon about 2 or 3 milliseconds after they reach, San Francisco, right?
And I've always been pretty online as a person and be like, am I missing something because I can't go to the JavaScript happy hour at in the Mission, or I don't even know. I don't know anything about.
I think
San Francisco.
There are a lot of JavaScript hours in the Mission. I've been there. Great Mexican food.
Cool. Yeah, that's neat and all, but is that totally fundamental to the thing? I think what's more fundamental is the VC scene of if I need to raise money, I need to be talking to people in person because that's what their culture asks of for that. So I think if your goal was, at one time anyway, I have a startup and I need to be part of the startup scene, then being there with your flesh and blood mattered. But I was never in that mode. Never once. The round that we took at CodePen was just friends and family kind of thing. And I didn't beg for it. It's not that I'm above that, but I just wasn't in that mode. Like, I'm like, if this works out and it works out good for everybody, cool. But I'm not putting together a pitch deck that's showing our growth curve and all that crap. I don't care. And I'm so involved in tech. I started CSS-Tricks when I was like in my parents' basement, essentially in Madison, Wisconsin, and then moved out to Portland and was just doing it at my buddy's house. And then I moved to Chicago and did it. Like and never in any of those places was I like totally like embedded in the tech scene there. I embedded myself in the tech scene. You know, I blogged, and that's how I operated things, and that was fine to me. So this idea that I needed to be somewhere geographically to get anything done, I always like bristled against that. I'm like, no, you don't. Do you have the internet? Cool, that's the tool that you need. You're fine. That's what I thought anyway. I say that, and then I lived there for a little bit because after Chicago, I was basically a Wufoo fanboy on CSS-Tricks. I was like, this app is amazing, man. You can make forms off it. I don't know if you remember it, but it still exists. It's like a form builder app, and you just dragged and dropped the fields that you need on there, and then it had a million other features like e-commerce and logic and yada yada. It was a great app, and I was always like, I was working at an agency at the time, and I'd use Wufoo for everything. It was like, if you need dynamic form data, which every website did, especially at the time, Wufoo is your buddy, you know? And I was so vocal about it. This is another like trick. You know, you like something, why don't you talk about it? The world needs a little positivity in it, you know? But I would talk about it all the time. And then I happened to be invited to a conference where somebody from Wufoo was also speaking at it. And they were like vetting me to work for them, which I was so excited, you know, and they had me down for an interview, and I got the job at Wufoo as my first like startup-y job. Moved down to Florida, worked for them. And then that app was so good that they got bought. They got bought by a company called SurveyMonkey that everybody knows out in their headquarters were in Palo Alto, and they wanted us to all move out there. And I was like, sign me up, you know? So I did spend some time in Silicon Valley. Even there, it wasn't like my success happened because I was rubbing shoulders with the right people because I happened to be there. Like, I didn't do that. I like bought a camper and camped and like did some mountain biking. And I never even went up to San Francisco. I've been to San Francisco like 5 times in my life.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's where you met your co-founder for CodePen.
Yeah, he was Wufoo.
Vasquez.
We were in Florida, and then he took the trip with us. We all lived within like half a mile of each other in Palo Alto. Some of us chose not to live in the city just for some reason.
Yeah.
And you know, I just liked the like slower pace of life down there. I think I just lived in a duplex, and I thought it was cool, but it was also outrageously expensive. Oh my God. Palo Alto is not a, you know, and I felt I was just kind of burning money. So when it came time for me to leave, basically I like vested my stock and stuff in SurveyMonkey. I was like, okay, bye. I don't like working at an office. I like working from wherever the hell I want to work.
Yeah.
I ended up moving out of there and all that. I think your original question was just about like geographics. How did I end up in Bend? Yeah. Another guy that worked at Wufoo and worked at SurveyMonkey was Tim Sabat. He was also an original co-founder of CodePen, but left. He lived here in Bend, and I'd come out to visit him just to work together and whatever. This town visits very well, Quincy. Man, like you come to Bend, you're going to be like, this is a charming ass little mountain town. It's like
Maybe
cool,
I will.
Yeah.
Next time I'm going up to Portland, maybe I'll stop by Bend.
Yeah, please do. It's just visits nicely. We have nice food, and the skiing is 30 minutes away and not particularly overcrowded. And so the winter scene is hot here, but there's a beautiful river through town that you can tube, and I think it's just very charming. I was always very charmed by it. And I'll tell you, I think it lives just as well as it visits. Like, I'm still charmed by our little town. I love living here, and there's enough people. And it's enough, that we get good concerts. There's a Whole Foods, it's like you don't sacrifice a lot living in a town of this size. I feel like it's still pretty nice in that way. So that's why. It's because it's a nice place to live.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I want to talk about writing, because that was your big entree into software development. That was your, like, who is this Chris guy? Oh yeah, he runs freaking CSS-Tricks, like the blog that everybody used back in the day to learn about like how to get things done properly with CSS, because everybody can just, you know, kind of like MacGyver some stuff together, right? But like to actually do things properly in a sustainable, maintainable way, you kind of propagated a lot of best practices. What got you into writing? And let's talk about like the changing nature of writing and blogging.
Sure. Yeah, that was a big unlock for me in the world. Like pretty much this whole journey that I've been on my whole life started from CSS-Tricks, probably, which was funny at the time. You know, there was I think a kind of a renaissance of CSS writing or something at the time, with like Dave Shea and Dan Cederholm and Zeldman, of course, and Eric Meyer and stuff, who were writing a lot about CSS. But then there was like this almost like a lull. I don't think they necessarily stopped writing, but CSS didn't move very fast at all. And it just wasn't that interesting maybe for a minute in the, like, I don't know, 2006-7 zone. You know, we were still very worried about IE5 and stuff, and like articles about dealing with IE6, certainly.
Yeah, and IE stands for Internet Explorer.
Yeah.
A lot of people might not remember that.
That was like, we had to spend way too many brain cells on dealing with IE for too many years. And that's kind of nice now that nobody even thinks about it. You don't even have to think about Edge. It's a perfectly good browser, but like, we kind of like won the war. You don't have to think about cross-browser compatibility that much anymore. You do a little, but it's, for the most part, it's fine. Anyway, so I picked it up when I started writing about CSS. I had no business doing that. I didn't know what those old luminaries knew, but I just didn't care, because, you know, there's a time when you're young and you just don't even know what you don't know. You just are like, I don't know, I'm just going to do it. And I would just write about the dumbest crap. But eventually, once in a while, something would hit. It was also the early days of like Smashing Magazine, and they were much bigger than CSS-Tricks. And they'd do roundups at the time, like the 100 coolest tips or some crap. And they'd put some crap of mine in there, and I'd see the traffic go up and I'd get so excited. I'd redesign the whole website because, I'm getting visitors now. I need to make it really beautiful looking. And then I would have more incentive to write more articles. And then people would comment. It was a WordPress site, so there's by default kind of a comment thread. You get a couple of comments, Quincy, man, it's thrilling. It's still thrilling to get comments.
I mean, there's this saying that like men don't get a lot of compliments. Like if somebody compliments you, like, you know, like, hey, great job on that interview that you just conducted with Chris Coyier, like that sticks with you. You're like, oh damn, like
it truly does. It does.
And so like having like a comment that's like, hey, like this was a really helpful tutorial, thanks. That does mean a lot to creators.
Yeah, even if it's that simple, but at the time, in those early days, I'd get literally sometimes 100 comments on an article. You know, articles would, if it got a little popular, people they had stuff to say, and it would be complimentary, but it'd also be like, did you think of this? Here's my take on it. I disagree. Even those are fun. You know, intellectual disagreement is also thrilling to me still, you know, as long as it's respectful and all that, which obviously it should be, or critique. Anyway, so that was all the incentive you need is that. And I wrote every day, at least once a day. You know, and that over years and years and years, that turns into a lot of stuff. And at that time, two things were also very important. SEO, you could become a subject matter expert by writing and blogging a lot. Google just rewarded the crap out of that at the time. So I got great SEO from articles. You know, I'd write about a topic. It's the number one thing, because the domain, you know, whatever they call, like the
domain authority,
it was pretty high. So Google was good to me in that way, because I was good to Google. I didn't do anything nefarious. I just was a subject matter expert.
Doing what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah,
and like that has been the social contract with Google. You write good stuff, and Google sends you traffic. And of course, they very kind of like sneakily said, like, well, you know, if you generate stuff and it's on long tail SEO topics that we don't have good articles, that's fine too. And next thing you know, I don't know if you've had
Right.
this experience where you Google a topic and you're like, oh, I wrote about this a while ago. And like, oh, I used to be the first person, but now there's an AI slop version of my article actually referencing
my
my
God.
article
Right.
and linking to it, and that has outranked me. Somebody
I'm
like
almost,
both.
that's why I'm speaking of the past tense here, because
Yeah.
like stuff has changed. you
Well,
know?
let's transition to that. How things have changed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's basically worse. Not to be old man shakes fist, but that's what it was. And the other thing that was true though is that I've always been interested in making money from the things I do online. And so it kind of fell in your lap at that time, or my lap anyway, was you can put display ads on the site that aren't even gross. They're just like, I don't know, FreshBooks wants to run a little ad on there and they're willing to pay you $300 a month to do it.
Yeah.
Can do, FreshBooks, happy to send you that invoice, and that those numbers went up and up as traffic went up and as demand went up, which is great. And then it gave way to doing sponsored blog posts here and there, and it gave way to video spots. And then eventually I had like a site sponsor of somebody that really had a bigger budget. Treehouse was a longtime site sponsor. They were an educational
They're a
thing.
Bend, Oregon company.
Were
Are they
No.
from Bend or maybe Eugene, Oregon?
Portland, maybe, or something. Maybe they're Oregon. I
They
don't
are in
remember.
Oregon.
It was Ryan Carson and his troop of original people. Good stuff. Yeah, and they, I quoted them some high ass number. Who knows what it was? 10 grand or something.
Yeah.
And then they were just like, sure. And then I put them at the top of the site and at bottom of articles and stuff, and they were happy to pay it, which is incredible money to me. So now it's not even my job. I have a job. And I just blog on the side because I just get a kick out of it. And I don't, I'm single and don't have a kid, and, redesigning a website on Saturday or working on features is a damn pleasure. So happy to do
like
it,
those days back before all the obligations where like, hey, this is money I can spend on pizza instead of, hey, this is money I can spend on childcare.
Yeah,
Or healthcare.
exactly. So
Um,
it was when I was leaving SurveyMonkey that I was like, I think I make enough money to be okay from just this. It was still a little bit of a leap because, a six-figure job that you just turn off never feels great. But at the time I was like, well, what if I just do more? I can write more. Maybe I could hire somebody, which adds a little bit more risk, but then we can really get going and churning on content and stuff. Maybe I can make a membership program. Who knows, And I tried all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the journey of all that.
So I'm going to ask a pretty invasive question here because, like,
Sure.
frankly, you and I, like, FreeCodeCamp benefited a great deal from the blog creator ecosystem as well. I wrote more than 500 articles, and of course, I like you do a lot of podcasts. This is episode 210 or something of the FreeCodeCamp podcast, right?
Yeah,
I've been doing
nice.
this for many years, and like the creator economy is kind of like under pressure right now from competing with essentially like blendered up versions of ourselves essentially, and also Google itself has basically just put AI overviews or whatever they're currently called at the top of search results. So whereas you might be the top link, there might be some CSS-Tricks article written by Chris Coyier. That's going to be like basically this giant collapsible thing, like several scrolls down, where the first link will actually be, right? Or maybe
it's such a joke. Do you remember them trying to tell us that we'll get more traffic now that they're doing it too? And I was like, are you sure? Because I feel like when you put the answer before a link to where you got the answer, they're probably not going to click, which is now just totally borne out to be true. Well,
I mean, like our AdSense traffic, like we just use Google AdSense. We didn't use anything fancy. I didn't go out and like actually sell advertising. We just said like the AdSense, you could like set it's like no ads, like, get rich quick.
So you can see, how does your
like,
chart
we do all
look?
that, and it went from like I think we're making like 15K a month just from like, Google, which is the cheapest. Like you're not going to make a lot of money from Google, but we had enough.
That's good. That was your baseline stuff from
and
mostly
like,
the blog, right?
It's like $1,500 now, if even that. Over the course, and that's like
that's the definition of decimated. You were decimated.
Yeah, decimated.
And you can use that word correctly.
1/10.
Yeah. That's that sucks, right?
Sucks.
That's proof. That's proof. You're not, I mean, you're just one website or whatever, but it's not because of what you did dramatically changed. It's
quality is higher than ever.
Changed.
We're publishing full free length books written by CTOs. right? They're volunteers. We're not paying these people. They're just sitting down and they're like, hey, I'm really passionate about Kubernetes. I'm going to write an entire book about Kubernetes, publish it to FreeCodeCamp. And, is the ads is indicative of like a drop in readership, frankly, because I think, and again, like I don't want to be too old man yelling at cloud. My goal is not to vent. My goal is to illustrate that like it's going to be harder out there if you want to do what Chris did and what FreeCodeCamp did here. And like, what advice would you have?
Because there's multiple things. Like, we can't just be like, oh, it is Google. They did this to us. The other things change too. AI arrived too. The tastes of how I want to consume this stuff changes too. There's some people doing very well with just free video. And certainly, like, the arrival of TikTok is meaningful and stuff. Maybe short form is the way to go. So it's always been true that like being nimble with how you produce content has benefited, so if we're just like, I'm sticking to this one thing and I'm not going to change anything, then that's always been a risk in business,
Right. But you're a writer and I'm a writer,
right.
Like,
it's hard for me to
people are still
shift.
reading. It's just that people are reading LLM output instead of like thoughtfully written by a human who has actually understands the concepts, not is just trying to predict the next token.
Yeah. Writing will always have a place. It's just to pin your career to it now is harder than it was.
What happens to developer blogging and the entire blogging model in terms of being able to sustainably blog when discovery breaks and attribution breaks and you don't even know whose work you're reading anymore because maybe it's cited, but it's cited so cryptically in like some kind of smashed down footnote that's like 10 characters long, ellipses, and you don't even get the full URL anymore.
Right. I feel like the only reason they do that is to be like, look, we got this from a real place, not because they expect anybody to click on it, because certainly nobody is clicking on it. Anyway, you're right. The incentives have changed a lot. Like, incentive used to be money. Sometimes it used to be SEO value. You could start a blog, who is it? LogRocket. I'm sure you're aware of them too, because they have like incredible blogging velocity on their thing. And the reason they did that is because like, hey, if we can be high up in search results, as a result, just through sheer data and traffic, we'll sell some pro accounts to our logging product too. That math is probably changing. And then people are leaving less comments because, I don't know, people they stick to their Slack. They're already in 10 Discords. They don't need to like leave one stray comment on one blog post, blah, they don't care. So it's changed. The incentive has changed, but there's always been smart people who use writing as something that they choose to do that are outside of any of those incentives. They don't really care. They want it just to get it out of their mind. And I think we see plenty of that still. I'm sure LLMs are excited that people are still writing fresh content out there in the world, but they are to some degree. I subscribe to plenty of developer blogs of people that are just writing because they just need to. I'm one of them. Even though the incentives have dried up to some degree, it's still rewarding in its own way. Like, I have to get this thought out. And I think there are some benefits still. I still look at students and people young in their journey. They're like, there's still benefit for you. At least if you're going to apply at my company someday, I want to see that you can communicate ideas with words. Because we're still doing that, and we're probably going to be doing that forever. A GitHub pull request, you need to explain with words. Communicating with me via text or Slack or email is still done with words. And you practicing writing those words good can happen through a blog post. Not to mention, it makes you provably you in a world where that's slightly more difficult than it used to be. But if you have a blog and I can say, oh, look, there's you, explaining how suspense works in React because you did it during your internship, that's worth 1 billion points and my sliding scale of points.
Yeah. And I'll say like clear communication ability as shown through like writing is indicative of clear thinking capability, critical thinking, problem solving, higher level reasoning. Like all these things come through in how you communicate. Like I'm not a native level Chinese speaker or a native level Japanese speaker, but I can kind of get a pretty good feel for how, I guess, intelligent somebody is, even if I'm talking to them in one of my second languages and maybe they're not even a native speaker of that language either, and they're
Interesting.
just doing
Can
their
you
best
really?
to communicate.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, you can absolutely kind of like think about like understand how thoughtful they are. How much are they just talking about themselves, or are they talking about people, or are they talking about ideas, right? And things like that, right? And a lot of that comes through, and so I think if nothing else, even if the remunerative layer is stripped out and you can't make any money blogging anymore, just the practice with articulating yourself and distilling concepts down into something that can be communicated and understood by another person, that is an incredibly powerful skill that will serve you well. But what are the like? I'm going to read you a quote because I thought it was such a profound, interesting quote, just about how much you care. You said, "quote I'll probably be explaining border radius tricks into the dirt with a stick after the apocalypse."
That sounds like something I would write, probably.
Yeah. You are a very verbose person. Like, I've read a lot of your blog posts, obviously 700 plus episodes of your podcast. I can't say I've listened to all of them, but you have a lot to say, right? How do you get, like, what advice would you have to somebody getting enough interested in a topic to have so much to say about that topic? Like,
well,
what
I
advice
like
would you
how
have
you
to a young
framed
person?
that, because it does make you think that it gives learning this secondary angle, right? You learn so that you can become more interested. Like, if you have a passing interest in something and then you learn more about it, it almost makes you more interested in learning even more about it. Or you'll learn that you're not that interested or something, but it gives you this secondary thing. Like, the more I learn about CSS, the more I want to know, the more, or just web technology in general. It makes me more curious about, like, how does this interact with that? What's the security model here? How is this implemented? What's performant and what's not performant? Like, deeper subjects than just like the surface level. How does this thing work? But I would never be asking those deeper questions if I didn't understand how the surface worked to begin with. So I like that. And writing might be your way in there. Writing is also famously a way of understanding something more, that you think you know it. In fact, if you ask yourself, like, how well do I know this? Chances are you're going to be like, pretty well, dude. Like, people have like a little bit of a self-inflated thing of how much they know. Like, I watched this person once be like, put your hands up like this, for the YouTube. Now steer and take move one lane to the right. You're driving down the highway, move one lane to the right. How do you do it? You go like this, right? Cool, we did it. We moved one lane to the right. No, you didn't. You crashed into the frickin' gutter because you didn't come back the other way too. Like, you can't explain it because your brain just thinks, oh, you just go like this a little bit. Now you've changed your trajectory 10 degrees to the right. You never came back to the trajectory you were already going on this straight highway. That's just such a silly little thing, but it's like, well, it's because you just thought you knew. Because of course I know. But you don't really know. Try writing it down and find out how little you know.
and I feel like that's a great analogy for, like, vibe coding, for example. Like it's easy to feel like, oh, I'm a wizard. Like I can accomplish literally anything when you're just looking at the, the chat log as it's like, okay, we're going to do this. Now we're going to touch this value. It's easy to feel like, and I like it. Like, a lot of people watching like some really pro level gamer on Twitch get all the headshots and stuff like that. Like, the nature of, like, the mirror neurons or something, like, it deludes you into feeling like you're really good at the game too, but you're actually really bad if you put the mouse and keyboard in front of it. And music is a perfect example of this. You think you understand music, like try playing piano. It's like playing Dark Souls, except instead of like a PS2 controller, you've got 88 keys. You have to press them with frame perfect input every time, right?
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I feel like overconfidence is the disease, and practice is the solution to that disease. Like, it's the cure.
And make it provable. Give yourself some stakes. I used to say that about websites too. Is like, if you make like a personal website, for example, you've given yourselves like real world stakes because other people can see it. Whether just practicing is one thing, but like an open mic is another thing. To come back to the music example, because now there's like some real stakes. People are going to see you produce that song, just like people are going to see your website, experience your website.
So putting yourself out there and continuing to do it, like, despite the fact that it is like both you and I acknowledge like a very adverse, like economic environment, I guess, for creating stuff. The attention has been kind of like steered away, and there's less attention. But if you shout loud enough, some people will still hear you.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe just doing it for yourself too is okay. It makes it more authentic in a way. You know, you're not like, I am producing this blog post because I have heard that it will give me a 8% leg up in the blog market or whatever. Like, I don't know, I might be able to sniff that out.
Yeah.
Whereas
you have to have some intrinsic motivation too, or else it's going to be forced.
Right. And if you've learned, if you're like, I can't do this, I don't want to make a personal site, I just don't want to. Well, guess what you've learned then? Maybe this isn't the thing for you, then that's okay.
Yeah, there are other things you can do, right? You don't have to do software development. You don't have to try to build a reputation for yourself among developers. No. But if you want to do that, I mean, would you agree that there's still plenty of game to be played?
I would think so.
You're not going home.
And there's maybe a little less competition. I did hear, you know, this is a little bit of anecdata, but of our local computer science crew that has halved and at a bigger level thirded, there's a little bit less.
You're talking about like the computer science program enrollment at your local university?
Yep.
Yeah, fewer people are enrolling in CS.
Yeah. Well, does that mean that it might be a little easier for you when you get out? It just might. Can't guarantee that, but like, I feel like maybe that correction is useful to us at the moment, that I'm not worried about those kids because they're just picking some different degree then. And maybe that's okay. That if we were just producing too many developers for a while, maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
We're correcting a little bit.
All the Wall Street bros who realized, I can make more money doing software development than working on Wall Street. Maybe they've gone back to Wall Street.
Right? Yeah, maybe. That's what I mean. Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know that. Don't quote. I'm not like, that's not research backed. It just feels anecdata.
Yeah. Anecdata. I love that term. I do want to just close by thanking you for the many things you've been doing for the developer community over the decades at this point. Like CodePen was such a huge unlock for FreeCodeCamp in the early days because we didn't have the sophistication to build like an editor. And frankly, what we have right now is still a shadow of what CodePen offers. And so we do send a lot of people your way. CSS
much appreciated. Thank you.
Huge service to the community. Like I was on there, you better believe like half the people working at FreeCodeCamp were probably on there like just throughout the day as Google was taking them there. And like the kind of like template that you created for like, hey, I can just work hard and I can really care about my craft. I think that's been an inspiration for a lot of people.
I hope so. That's lovely, really. Yeah. The coolest thing you can do is care.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Well, best of luck with like maintaining and keeping up the momentum with CodePen 2.0. I appreciate you taking time to explain the many design decisions and the long path to kind of like figuring out how to thread that needle, so to speak, between like your multi-file users and people who just want to go in and have simplicity. That's really cool. That's going to be a good case study someday. I think a lot of people, like a lot of developers and maybe even business people, are going to be like looking at how you did that. And
I hope so. There's a lot to it. I would say that we have a podcast there too called CodePen Radio that has another 300 episodes on it, which was our journey from the very beginning of taking funding and figuring all that out to up until now. And lately, of course, we've taken little pauses here and there, but we're going strong now, like kind of explaining what 2.0 is all about and some of the architectural traces of how that works. So if you're a podcast person, CodePen Radio.
Very cool. And I'll encourage everybody to check out the links in the description. Chris has got lots of tasty morsels for you if you want to learn more, hear more from this guy. Chris, it's been a pleasure. Everybody, until next week, happy coding.
Yeah, happy coding.